Well, welcome, Nebraska Dental Association. This is a re-recording of the course that was given on Friday the 16th. This is the 18th of April, 2002. It's good to be with you. A couple things here. Thanks for waiting for a couple weeks for me. I told that to the group on Friday, and this is a re-recording. Again, thank you very much. I had a very busy February planning and actually presenting for Chicago Dental Society at the midwinter meeting. Then I was out skiing for a couple weeks on a couple ski trips, very busy there, and then all of a sudden everything shut down. I mean everything, including the fact that my wife got coronavirus on March 15th. We were quarantined in our house for a couple of weeks until the 29th. I was in no mood at that point to get ready for this course, and the Nebraska Dental Association people, David and Jody, were great to help me out on that. So the other thing is we've learned a whole lot more about coronavirus and how it may affect our practices. So I'll be going over that. So this show is going to have a bunch of different things in it. We're going to be doing worksheets for a little while, financial worksheets. Also, I'm going to have a fair amount of videos in this presentation. Yeah, just looking at a screen with stuff on it for 3 hours is pretty darn boring. The videos should help out, I hope. So let's get started. First, Nebraska Dental Association website. Please download the forms. It should be there for you to do. There's about 6 different ones. Please download them. The first group of them, again, have numbers all over them. Don't try to fill them out before we go through the section because I have to explain things to you as we're going along here. So download the forms and come back and we'll get going. Okay, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge some of the mentors I've had over the years. Brian Hufford is first. He wrote articles for dental economics for years. They were academically based, really good information, great guy too. So Brian Hufford has been a big help to me over the years. Greg Stanley, he was the muni bond guy. My wife and I took a course from Greg back in the mid 80s as far as investing, and he said these are going to be safer than any stock funds or stocks, and actually the percent that you're going to get of growth over the years is going to be fairly similar. He was right until the early 2000s. By then, muni bonds yields were way down from what they were before, but it worked great, and that's really how I made my money in after-tax funds. Yeah, they're cash funds. Reese Harper has Dentist Advisors, which is a financial planning group in Salt Lake City. Have met him a couple times. We've worked on a couple projects together. Great guy, has a really sharp group of people, and has a lot of good information online. Talk a little bit more about him later. And here is probably the smartest guy out there as far as personal finance, period. There are guys smarter that are academics, but Jim Dolly is a MD in Salt Lake City. Reese and Jim are both in Salt Lake City. Jim runs White Coat Investor. I'll talk a lot about that in the show. Well, first of all, I'd like to present an introductory video to you guys. Let's go on with that. 6 years ago, I had the pleasure of attending a dentist cocktail and dinner party in Denver at an exclusive home in the Denver Country Club area. This is a 100-year-old area. It has a fancy country club, and it's very, very exquisite. The home itself was on about a 2/3 acre lot, which is very large for that area. Most of the homes are on quarter acre or smaller lots. It was very pretty. Large 100-year-old trees surrounded the home. Entering the home, there were vaulted ceilings, wood staircase. There was a private library, which was very large on the first floor. Also, there was a huge kitchen. The kitchen had dual Dutch ovens. What they needed those for? Obviously, he had big parties with probably 100 or more people. Outside, there was a fire pit, which was bricked in with golden globed lights above it, which was absolutely fantastic. It was an exquisite place, to say the least. So I felt very, very fortunate to go to it and actually had a great time. Dinner itself was filet mignon. We had Anderson Valley, Rieslings and Cabs. After dinner, we had Johnny Walker Black and some sort of brandies. He had 3 or 4 of them out that I had never even seen before. Well, afterwards, Dr. Guile motioned me aside and said, "Can you wait afterwards for a few minutes? I'd like to discuss a couple financial things with you." I said, "Sure, no problem." As can be ascertained for the lifestyle that Dr. Guile has, he leads a supposedly charmed existence. He's also one of the funniest and nicest people I've ever encountered. He spends 2 weeks every year working in third world countries providing dentistry. So he's a giver. Dr. Guile was age 52. He had a large cosmetic practice in this country club area, which is actually near Cherry Creek, which is a big shopping area for Denverites. He produced $3 million a year and took home $1 million. In other words, he was doing extremely well. What kind of lifestyle do the Giles enjoy? As far as cars, Dr. Guile and Mrs. Guile both drive Lexuses, and they're on leases, which they rotate every 3 years. They've got 2 daughters. One's a freshman in college, one's a senior in college. And they like BMWs better because they're sportier and seem to be more modern to them. Again, they're on leases. Guile cherishes his membership in the local country club, Denver Country Club. He feels he really gets to know the local scene much better. He has a chance to meet some of the power brokers in town, but he really just enjoys the people. They're all very nice. He also golfs once a week at the country club, and he and his wife try to eat dinner there at least once a week. Guile treats his family to a first-class vacation at least once a year. Last year, they had a Mediterranean 2-week cruise on a very small boat. Also, each year at Christmas time, they go to Vail for skiing for a week. Well, let's look at a partial list of expenditures for the Giles. Again, their income is $1 million a year. Credit cards, they spend $20,000 a year on interest. Yes, he has a $100,000 debt on his credit cards, which really stays pretty much the same. Clothing, $60,000 a year. Mrs. Guile takes up half of that, or about $30,000. Autos, they spend $50,000 a year. Yes, they have large leases, and there's also maintenance that costs a lot of money. College is $100,000 a year for the 2 daughters. One is in a private school, one in a public. Again, $100,000 on college. Home, this is a biggie. Their home mortgage is $170,000. Home maintenance, upgrades, repairs cost another $150,000 a year. Yes, they're spending $320,000 a year on their home. Country club costs them $24,000 a year. That's $2,000 a month. Entertainment, $30,000 a year. This is for concerts, plays, this sort of thing. Travel is $100,000 a year. Yes, these are expensive trips that they go on. Taxes, $320,000 a year. Does that sound familiar? That's what they spend for their house. Annually, they spend $140,000 more than Gile's income of $1 million. What's their overall net worth? Minus $1 million. Yes, minus $1 million. Gile's frustration. I earn great money. I live in a great spot. I've got great neighbors. Life should be happy, but something isn't quite correct here. My wife and I were much better off financially right out of college. I took a quick look at Gile's Rolex watch and kind of chuckled and said, Tom Stanley was right. Stanley wrote the Millionaire Next Door series. Stanley says there is a high correlation between the price of one's watch and their consumption lifestyle. Stanley goes on to tell us that many professionals are income affluent and balance sheet destitute. Okay, well, we're going to stop there and we'll come back to Gile later. 6 years. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? Course overview. Well, first of all, I'm going to give you some information that I have about coronavirus. That along with your retirement number, which again are the forms. So if you haven't gone and printed the forms yet, please stop the video, go get them printed up. We'll be doing that next. Talk about young doctors, several things about them. A fair amount of time will be spent on savings and I can't say it, savings and spending, then investment strategies, decumulation into retirement. How do you take your money out? How do you spend down? Protect yourself, retirement topics, and so forth. All in all, there's a lot of information here, and let's get to it. First of all, your number. Let's have you guys pull out the sheets, and I'm going to make a little noise here because I'm pulling up my sheets to help you through. The first one that we're going to do is called the Dentist Retirement Budget 2020. What this is actually on the fly. We're going to use average numbers from early retired dentists, and that is cofactored with Bureau of Labor Statistics top quintile for early retirees. Yes, I've gone back and forth with these to come up with average numbers. You're going to take those averages and tweak them and go, no, we're spending more than that, I think, or we're spending less than that. So we're going to go through this line item by line item. So it's going to take a little bit, but I'm going to explain each one as we go through. So let's start out here. First of all, autos. Average that people pay per vehicle is $700. And by the way, this is for a couple, these numbers. This is for two people. If you're one, it's going to be less on a lot of these. So $700 per vehicle per month. Two vehicles is $1,400. That includes depreciation, fuel, insurance, service, and assumes that you buy a new car every 5 years. If you buy luxury brands, it's going to be more. 75% I put down here. Yes, you're going to take it in for service more. You're going to pay more for it. So $1,400 becomes more like $2,500 for two cars. If you always buy used, it's going to be a bit less. $1,400 becomes about $1,200. Okay, next item, animals. In retirement, normally people have one cat or one dog. What you spend for dogs is going to be twice as much. It says $200 per month. Dogs are going to be more expensive than cats because of kenneling. This includes medical care, by the way, here too. Charity, gifting. Average is about $300 per month in retirement. That's $3,600 per year for most early retirees. If you tithe, remember that's going to be a lot less because your income is going to be a lot less. Still, it's going to be higher probably than at $300. Clothing. Normally, in pre-retirement, it's going to be quite a bit more than that. But in retirement, couples don't spend a whole lot. $150 a month, that's $300. $150 a month per person, that's $300 total. Hobbies. In retirement, this can get expensive. Golf, skiing, I'm a skier, I'm a biker too. Art supplies, doing all sorts of different things in retirement. Averages $250 a month in retirement, okay? But it could be more. I'm spending quite a bit more these days. Entertainment, dining out, $500 a week for once a week per month, $700 for twice. This may be a bit low. This assumes that you go out to a nice restaurant with drinks one night a week and then maybe another 1 or 2 times a week going to a more common dining area. So that itself, $500 a month, may be a bit low, especially in early retirement. Fees, admissions, theaters, sports, concerts, $400 a month. This may be low too. The concerts have just taken off in the last several years. Vicki and I go up to Red Rocks probably about 3 times a year. Tickets are not cheap. You can almost never get them on the primary market, and you often have to pay $150 a piece for tickets for good groups. So fees, admission, theater, sports, concerts may be higher than $400 a month. I think ours, and I haven't checked it recently, may be closer to $800. Gifting, okay, $500 a month, 50% of that is for Christmas time. That's $6,000 a year. Yours may be higher or lower. Again, put down what you think it may be for any of these. Groceries are actually about $600 a month. If you go to Whole Foods or Sprouts, it may be closer to $1,000. Property tax, homeowners fees. Homeowners fees is if you're in a condo or an association. So $600 a month may be a bit high. In Denver, I just looked at my property taxes. They were about $6,000 for the year, which is $500 a month. You guys may be less. Household cleaning, maintenance, insurance, home improvements. I put $800 a month. That's like close to $10,000 per year. Our home in Denver is an older brick home built in 1939 in a neighborhood which is nice. And for the life of me, I'm spending $20,000 a year on home improvements and maintenance only. I mean, I can't go that much to Home Depot, am I? Yes. Yes, I'm spending a lot. So $800 per month may be low. It certainly is for me and our retirement going forward. Hygiene, haircuts, mani-pedis, nails. I put $100 per month. It's going to be more pre-retirement when you're actually working. But in retirement, it's not an issue as much. Medical. This includes Medicare and long-term care. Basically, just put $1,500 down, folks. Medicare does not pay for everything. We're all over the place as far as medical expenses. My wife and I right now, we've been on Medicare for 4 years now, and we're paying about $1,000 a month with the add-ons. Long-term care, I put $500 per month to cover that. And we'll talk about long-term care later on, whether you should actually buy a policy or not. But if you're going to self-fund for long-term care, at least $500 a month. And again, I would just put down $1,500. Okay, book subscriptions down low is about $150 a month. Utilities, $700 a month I put down there. You know, as I was going through things, I just looked at my Comcast bill. I'm jacked up to like $270 now. I'm going to have to talk to them again every couple of years. You know, you got to yell at them and say, this is too much. What are we going to do to bring it down? And you get it down another $50 or so. And then a couple of years later, it jacks up again. Whatever. Extra cash, just walking around money. A couple $100 a month for just going to Barnes and Noble and picking up something, say. Vacations, travel. Okay, this can be crazy high. I put $2,000 a month average. That's $24,000 a year. Couples vary all over the place. $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year isn't too unusual to see, especially in early retirement. And then other. Well, the one thing I have not talked about here is a mortgage, a home mortgage in retirement. Here's the deal. If you're going to have a home mortgage 8 years or less in retirement, it really isn't that important going forward. I would not include it. If it's more than 8 years, I would go ahead and put it down. Other things. I put down boats. Could cost a fair amount per month. Grandkids' private school, country clubs, etc. Okay. So you're putting down your best guess as to what your amount is. What I'd like you to do is in that first example column there, or in your amount, column, go ahead and add up everything. As soon as you get the same number twice on this total down here below, you're done with that part. We're going to add in taxes for that amount of money per month. Actually, you're going to multiply by 12, I'm sorry. Then you're going to add in taxes for that $128,000. Taxes are fairly low. So your total retirement income pre-tax or including taxes is $163,000. That may seem low to you. What I've found is that because housing is usually not included in a retirement budget, and because you don't have to save a lot of money and generate income from that, basically somebody earning about $260,000 a family can live on about 60%, or in this case around $163,000. Okay, the other thing that I've found is these numbers are a little bit low when I'm working with groups. Oftentimes I see in this yearly retirement income $200,000 and above. Yeah, I've actually seen 300 before. So the numbers may be a bit low here. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's your retirement budget, gang. That you take to your financial planner and say, This is what this guy said is what I need for income in retirement. And they probably will look at it and go, man, that's really low. You say, well, he said that that should be accurate because I don't have a mortgage going forward and I don't have to have all that savings. I don't have to generate all that income to save anymore. So it should be less. Typically, professionals, financial professionals will say, you need 80 or 90% of your pre-retirement income. Well, that's for people who are on a salary, not who own a business. Okay, let's go on to the next part here. This is 2020, the dentist number calculation. Now we're going to figure out, knowing that you need to have that amount of money per year, and I'm fiddling with the forms here. Okay, now that you know how much money you need to generate per year, going forward, retiring in a certain number of years, how much do you need to save total and per year? Okay, there's assumptions at the top of the sheet there. You don't really need to read that. Example is a 45-year-old dentist who wants to retire at age 60. So that's pretty young. 60 is an unusual number. Charles Blair tells us the average dentist retires now at age 69. Anyway, let's go through this and they'll give you an idea as to how much you may need and to save per year. So A, enter the number from the previous page at the bottom. In this case, it's 163,000. Of that 163,000, certain things are going to be paid, which we can subtract from that, like Social Security. And I will talk about Social Security later in some detail. Will it be there or not? My firm belief is it will be, but I'll tell you why later. Dentists at full retirement age are going to get 37,000 or so. We max out every year. That's the number this year in 2020, 37,000. So put that down. Wife's Social Security or spouse's Social Security, excuse me, because sometimes a doctor is a woman, obviously. Spouse is either going to be half of that or whatever their retirement number is from Social Security, whichever is higher. In this case, we just put half down. So 37,000 and 18,000. If your spouse has a traditional pension from like a local, state, or federal government, put that down per year. If you have rental income, if you own homes, you can put down the total of that rental income that you're receiving, or on the next page, the value of all those properties or property. The next one is expected total inheritances. Yeah, I have never come across a dentist who didn't get an expected inheritance. So I think it's safe to put this down. Of course, you don't have to if you don't want to. This is somebody who's expecting $500,000 in an inheritance using the 4% rule, which you'll talk about a little bit later on. You can take out 4% per year going forward in retirement and generally not run out of money. 4% of $500,000 is $20,000 a year. So in this B category here, we have 37,000, 18,000, 20,000. We're going to subtract that from the 163, and we come up with $87,000. This guy is going to have to get $87,000 per year from his savings or his investments. Okay, so this guy is going to be in retirement for quite a long time, and there's a multiplier. Well, he's going to retire at 60, so should he multiply by 35? No, it's a number smaller than that because you will have growth in your investments. They're not all going to be in muni bonds or in a money market fund. There is going to be growth. So the previous number, the 87,000, he's retiring at age 60. The multiplier is 25. If you retire at full retirement age, it's going to be 22. If you retire at, say, 69 or 70, the number is 18. That's not on here. So if this doctor was retiring at age 70, his number would be 87,000 times 18, not by 25. Okay, next, C2, add any one-time expenditures in retirement, big expenditures, like you're buying a $200,000 boat, or your daughter is going to get married, or granddaughter, and it's going to be a $300,000 wedding. Any huge amounts add to this, in this case, $2.1 million. Okay, down here below, this doctor is retiring before his full retirement age, so he's not going to get Social Security benefits for the first few years into retirement. Because of that, we added on some. You can actually ignore that C3. It's not a big deal. Sometimes when I'm presenting, the math nerds will say, "Hey, you got to do this," and go, "Yeah, I know." Again, we're just working on averages. So down here at C4, his total amount that he's going to need to have saved for retirement is 2.5 million. That's your number. That is your retirement number. So 2.5 million. Let's go on to the next page. So enter that number from the previous page up at the top. D1, we're going to figure out how much savings you have right now going towards retirement. What is that? And it can include any retirement funds like IRAs, 401ks, office profit sharing, and so forth. Cash accounts, which most of my money was in when I retired, cash accounts that you have, and properties other than your primary residence. Yeah, you're going to have to live somewhere, so you can't include that. Properties other than your primary residence. You can either use the total of that here or again the rental number on the previous page. Okay, so this guy has $600,000 saved. That's going to grow on its own without doing anything over the years. And in this case, for him, it's going to be 15 years. It's going to grow by a factor of 1.82. 5 years is 1.1, 10 is 1.35. You can interpolate there if you need to come up with an approximate number to multiply what you have saved right now. Okay, so that 600,000 becomes about 1.1 million going ahead. Also, let's add in the value of your practice. Now, this probably won't grow much at all. And by the way, these numbers are all real numbers. They're 2020 numbers. We're not putting inflation in here. That just screws with your mind and everything else. So going forward, these are real numbers. The total that we come up with will be 2020 numbers. Okay, value of the practice probably will not increase with inflation. Because of that, on its own, a $500,000 amount after all the fees are paid for your practice is still going to be worth $500,000. It's not going to grow. So subtract D2 and D3 from the number at the top of the page, that 2.5 million, to find out how much additional money this doctor is going to have to generate going forward before he can retire. And that's $985,000, or basically $1 million he's going to need to save between age 45 and 60 to retire. Next one is how much you're going to have to save per year. Again, we got factors down here. If you want to retire in 5 years, it's 0.189. He wants to retire in 15 years, so it's 0.049. Okay, so in this case, he's going to have to save about $50,000 a year. The stuff down there below just comes up with what I put in for factors for numbers. Okay, so this is not as valuable as that budget sheet. This gives you an idea of the math involved. For young doctors in particular, the numbers get a little squirrely here because you've got so many years going forward. If you're 50 or over, this is not too far off. Again, it just gives you an example of where you may go. But the budget figures themselves, you can go ahead and take that to your financial planner and they'll go, where in the heck did you come up with this? There's this number guy and he says, this is what I'm going to need. And they go, that's really low. I don't think that's right at all. Well, tell them what I told you. There's going to be less in retirement because you don't have all that income to generate savings in particular. Okay, beyond this, to go to a financial planner who has a Monte Carlo analysis is imperative. What this is a computer-generated analysis of how the markets have done since usually 1920 until 2020, and it goes through thousands of scenarios of what may have happened or what could happen in the future to give you a percentage chance of not running out of money. And the percent should be 90% or higher. Some financial planners say 95%. Here on this, if you can look past all the colors there, it says probability of success. Not running out of money is 92% for this couple. Here's one that's online that you can actually find for free. Normally you have to go through a financial planner, or if you want to get a Monte Carlo analysis to do it on your own, it costs money for you. This one is geeky. It's like a spreadsheet. It's done by an engineer. It actually works really well. Where you put in your own numbers, it takes a while to figure out how to work with it, but it works fantastically. Flexible retirement planner. Just Google flexible retirement planner and you should be able to find it. All righty. Well, let's get down to coronavirus. Yeah, 2020 is going to be a number that we will remember for forever. I just think the only other thing that I can think of in the past that even approaches this is World War II. That was a biggie. That required a lot of sacrifice for years for people. That required a real commitment. This is going in that direction. I don't have any great ideas as to how long this is going to last, but it's going to be big. In the meantime, I think it's wise to protect your practice. This is Rita Zamora's website. She's the social media guru for dentists and has great presentations. Protect your practice. What do you do? Well, it's easy enough. Keep in touch with your patients. That could be as easy as just sending out an email blast every 1 or 2 weeks saying, this is what we've been doing the last couple of weeks, my family and I. They want to know that you're okay. You want to know that they're okay. And just send a picture. Just take a picture and put it in with the email of what you guys did. You're outside doing something, walking, maybe biking around. People want to know how you're doing. So to keep your patients engaged, yeah, they're going to come back later anyway. They've got nowhere else to go. There's no other dental offices that are open. But to just let them know that you're thinking of them, I think is really, really important. By the way, Rita's great at social media, YouTube in particular, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Another thing is, keep in touch with your staff. Yeah, they're probably all furloughed at this point, and you're giving them some medical benefits and so forth, and maybe some other vacation and all that's been built up. But they're hurting, just like you're hurting. But keep in touch with them. You do want them to come back. Okay, I'm a statistics guy, as you may guess. And there's a great blog online called 538. It's a great blog. I don't think there's an app for it. But 538 is the number of electoral votes for the United States, or the number of senators and congressmen. It's a statistical analysis of things. And they statistically analyze sports and politics. They've been looking at politics and coronavirus from a lot of different perspectives the last several weeks, looking at foreign curves, looking at the United States curves, states in particular, and they've got a lot of information. My basic guess here is going forward that we may miss in the dental practice 4 months this year. You know, it could only be 2. I think that's a little bit too little. 6 months, probably not that much. So I'm thinking in terms of 4 months. Maybe right, maybe wrong, but I've got some forms here that we're going to go over. And the first one is, this is from John McGill out of Charlotte, a great certified, great accountant. He's got a really good practice. This is a sample form that he provided to Wayne Kerr and I recently for Chicago. And it's the god ugliest thing I've ever seen, but it's a really important document. And your accountant should show that to you and tell you what the important parts are. So I'm going to go through that here for several minutes. Okay, up at the top, I've got my little arrow coming up here. Up at the top, we've got 12 months actual. I'm going to look at this column and the COVID column, which I actually came up with. So This guy's producing 1.25 million, guy or gal is producing 1.25 million. With a COVID environment, it's going to be about two-thirds of that if you're not working for 4 months. Well, let's look at occupancy. Occupancy, most of it you're going to have to pay. Equipment, building costs, depreciation, repairs and maintenance are definitely going to be less, but property taxes and so forth, you're going to have to pay. So this guy was paying $122,000 a year, a little bit less than that. Staff compensation is going to be a whole lot less. Now he was paying in a year $317,000, 25% for employees. That's really, really low. 187,000 versus 317. That's going to be cut back to about two-thirds. Professional supplies, same thing. We've got 150,000, 105 over here. Non-operating expenses like continuing education, marketing and promotion, meals and entertainment. Marketing and promotion is probably going to be about the same, but overall, all of these non-operating expenses go from, and this is in small type for some reason, 114,000 down to 78. Overall, total expenses, this guy's total expenses were $705,000 out of 1.25 million. He had an overhead of 56%, which is amazing. How much did he make? Oh, and COVID, again, it's going to be about two-thirds, 705 versus 486. I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. I'm so excited about that 56%. Net operating income, if he was a sole proprietor, he would have made $544,000 or 43%. That's a lot of money, guys. Well, in COVID environment, it's going to be quite a bit less than that, about $230,000 less. He's going to lose out on income $230,000 this year. He's still got an income, though, which is kind of nice to see. Officer salary, this is probably a defined benefit plan. Officer salary is $200,000. You keep that low to keep your taxes low. Family member shares, either the spouse is in the office or maybe the kids work part-time there. Retirement plan contribution, $135,000. Again, probably a defined benefit plan. That's a lot of money to put away, and that's great for this guy. COVID environment, $16,000, not much. In other words, he's got his salary and his family taken care of for somewhat, but there's only $16,000 left going into the retirement plan. Down here at the bottom, we have net income, leftover income. That normally goes into a kitty and doesn't come out until you want to tax it. So that's actually money left too in this environment, zero. So this guy is still doing okay. You know, he can pay his bills, have a little bit in retirement funds left over, but not a whole lot. Here's a more normal practice, and Wayne Kerr gave me these numbers. Mid-career dental office overhead. Okay, this is assuming that the doctor is producing close to $1 million. I put $80,000 a month here. Normal overhead for staff is 25 to 38. It's really rare to have it as low as 25%. I never got anywhere near that. 38% is actually probably more normal than 25. Corona overhead during those 4 months that you're not working. Yeah, you're still going to be paying some things for your staff, as I just talked about, but it's not going to be very much. Lab's going to be zero. Rent's going to be probably there, 5 to 7% rent and facility. Equipment, 3 to 5% if you're purchasing equipment or to have loans for it. Office supplies, nothing. Dental supplies, nothing. Marketing, I think probably will be about the same. You should still be marketing to keep in touch with your patients again. Operational discretionary is going to be quite a bit less. Total overhead in a normal dental practice is 59 to 86%. A lot of good dental offices, it's about two-thirds. Here, for those 4 months, it's going to be 17 to 25%. If your normal collections are $80,000 a month, you probably have overhead in this environment of $15,000 to $20,000 per month with no income, nothing coming in. There will be funds from patients, but realistically, that'll kind of overlap a couple months later once you start up again. So you're going to lose $15,000 to $20,000 per month in this environment if you're not working. That's a $60,000 to $80,000 loss. In other words, don't even think about contributing to a retirement fund this year and maybe a couple years, and that's okay. Once things get rolling again, you're going to have a whole lot of elective dental work to be done on people. So things will be good later on, but not now, not for a while. Okay, let's look at a typical mid to late career budget. This is not a retirement budget, and the numbers are bigger. And on my form here, I actually printed it out with red. I don't think you guys got red on yours, but there are asterisks over on the side here on things where you can save. So I'm just going to briefly go over that. And again, just take this home. There's nothing to fill in. Well, you can fill in here, but you don't necessarily have to. Charity giving can be cut back, definitely. It averages in your career probably about $300 a month. That was the same thing for retirement. Clothing is a lot higher here. You can save a whole lot on clothing. You're inside, you're going outside. Nothing needs to be fancy anymore. Hobbies, skiing, golf. They're closing all the golf courses in Colorado. Skiing, nah. Biking, yes. Artwork, probably. $800 can go down to close to zero. Dining out, we don't do that anymore. But, you can go and do carry out easily, but that's going to be a whole lot less than $800 a month that a lot of couples are spending. Again, these numbers are bigger than the ones on the retirement budget, but that could be a couple hundred max. Fees, admissions, sports, concerts, zero. Gifts, that can be lower. Household, home improvements, guys. Do it yourself is fine. Having somebody come out and do it is not a really wise thing to do. You can do it yourself on a fair amount of things. Let's go to the next page. This is actually on the same sheet, but I put it on 2 pages here. Utilities, not going to be anything different. Cash, probably not. Vacations, you aren't going to take them. Vicky, through her work, my wife, had several educational trips planned this year. She went to Hungary for a special occasion. She was getting an honorary doctorate. She would have gone to Hungary in March. I was going to go with her for that. She had a conference in Honolulu for international studies. I was going to go with her for that. And she had another one in Alaska. All in the last 3 months, she had 3 trips canceled. We've got a retirement. She's actually retiring from academia June 30th. We had a trip to Galapagos plan. Now, this is going to be, I think it was a $20,000 trip or something for 8 days. It's a splurge. I don't think that's going to happen. So vacations and all, forget it. They're going to be down practically nothing. Country club, boats and everything, you could put that in. Now, this total that I've got pre-retirement is $16,000 a month. That's more normal. Remember, it was $11,000 for a retiree. Budget total is $198, but add in taxes, which are more. We come up with $272,000. Typical dentist retirement savings are not included here, so this is over $300,000. This is more typical numbers that you guys are used to seeing. Okay, let's go on here. The big six different parts of finance for dentists. First of all, for young dentists and actually mid-career or late dentist, late in your career. Let's talk about ways to get out of debt here, first of all. I'd like to talk about these books. I think there's 4 of them or so. These were SUNY Albany professors back in 1995 or so. Wrote this book called The Millionaire Next Door. What they did is academic studies of buying habits of millionaires. What they did is sent out forms. They identified people that had more than $1 million. The bottom line was $1 million or more. At that point, the average was about 1.4 million, which would be closer to 2 million today to be a millionaire. So they actually had them fill out forms of buying habits, such as what's the most expensive car you ever bought? And in this case, it was Ford Explorer. Or what is the car that you're driving right now? Ford Explorer was the favorite. What's the most expensive pair of shoes you've ever bought? Usually it was around $200. Most expensive pair of, most expensive ring, wedding ring, maybe a couple $1,000s. all sorts of different areas of their life, what they paid for groceries, what restaurants they went to, and it was basically Chili's or Panera Bread, which wasn't here back then, but wasn't there back then, but just regular things. It was amazing that they were buying regular products. How much was their housing worth back in 1995? About $200,000, which would be equivalent to maybe $400,000 or $500,000 a year, $400,000 or $500,000. Okay, so the other thing that they did was they had actual interviews in depth more, where they actually met at a location, somebody's home or maybe a restaurant, and they would ask them further follow-up questions. Interestingly, they lived in regular neighborhoods. Also, the clothes that they wore to these occasions were just normal, regular clothes. What were the professions? Plumbers. A lot of people owned their own businesses. Plumbers, not necessarily educated. Teachers were in there. Very few professionals, lawyers, dentists, doctors. Yeah, these people had regular professions. How about that? Big point that they make in all of the books, again, there are about 4 of them. They're easy reads, they're fun. The biggest obstacle you have is where you live, the neighborhood that you live in. Mortgage plus maintenance plus upgrades. And guess what? Dentists are great at doing expensive upgrades. Mortgage plus maintenance plus upgrades is almost always more expensive than renting. Yes, for your home, you normally will spend more than you would for rent. You hear the real estate people saying, don't throw money away on rent. Buy your home, own your home. Well, you don't really own it until all of the interest payments have been paid off, and they are significant. So realistically, when you take a pencil and paper and put down everything, you don't really come out ahead. Now, I do know of doctors who've rented their whole career. By the time they're to their mid-50s, they're sitting pretty. They are doing really, really well financially, all of them. And these are doctors who have always rented. The other thing about them is they're all single. So if you have a family, you need stability. Yeah, with a rental, you can get kicked out. Things can change. The owners can change. You don't have as much stability. So you're going to have a home if you have a family. Just be careful, especially with the upgrades. Okay, when you live in a nice neighborhood, your children are much more apt to go to private schools. And I do know doctors out there who are spending $100,000 per year for 2 kids to go to private schools. And then, of course, they go to private universities, and then they want to go to grad school. And oh my God, it costs a fortune. Fancy clothes, country clubs, nice dining. Hey, this sounds like Guile. Again, we'll check in with him later. Okay, as far as budgeting and keeping track of expenses, I used Quicken for a long time, and about 3 years ago switched over to Mint. Mint is really cool. It'll attach to all of your credit card and bank accounts, and it attaches immediately. So you have today's payments on your credit card that automatically show up in Mint. I do all the finance in our life. My wife is working all the time, and I try to check in with her once a month to talk about expenses. Occasionally, there'll be a spurious entry on one of her credit cards. She has like 4 or 5 credit cards. I've got one. I like simple. It works so well. If you lose your credit card, you only got to call one place. If there's a weird entry, it may show up everywhere. It's only on one card. So anyway, Mint works really well. I spend probably about an hour a month going through bills on Mint. Is that excessive? No, it's really not that tough. Do dental couples do it? By and large, my gut feeling is not very often. Okay, best websites for young dentists. Let's look at the movie here. This is actually for older dentists also. Any dentist would appreciate these websites. Well, I'm cruising the neighborhood today. It's a beautiful spring day in April in Denver. And today I'd like to present the 3 best financial websites for young dentists. Enjoy. Okay, well, let's look at 3 different websites that can provide really good financial, academically based information for a young dentist. My go-to spot for all things financial with academic basis is White Coat Investor. It's a great site started by a doctor about 8 years ago. He's in Utah. I've met him. His name is Jim Dolly. He is absolutely taking over as far as information. So let's start here. Beginners, intermediates, advanced, and experts. Okay, well, we're going to talk about beginners normally here because you're a new dentist. 12 things to know about student refinancing. We're going to look at that for a moment here. And he has various things that he goes through. You can get cash back now, listing some of the best refinancing companies for you. And if you click on it, it'll show you what they specifically provide for you. You don't have to refinance all your loans. Consolidation and refinancing are not the same thing. Other issues, 12 in all. You can refinance multiple times, and again, he links up groups that can refinance for you. And scroll back somewhat slowly here so you don't get dizzy looking at this. That's White Coat Investor. A lot of different things. There's a course that he has. I think it costs $500. A little bit more advanced. There's a blog that he has, and there's a book. The book is absolutely fantastic. So that's White Coat Investor. Let's go on to the next one here. Okay, the next website is an Oblivious Investor, again written by a young fellow named Mike Piper. He has really cool investing and financial books. They're all 100 pages or so. They're short, they're to the point, and they're very informative. Anyway, Oblivious Investor gets into taxes, accounting, when can you retire, basic investing. He says why to invest in index funds, because they're cheap and they cover the whole market and they do better long term, but that's a different issue. Anyway, we're going to look at the beginning of the website here. He's got 8 simple portfolios listed that you can use, which, guess what? That's what I use, and I think I'm fairly sophisticated. Right now, all my extra money is going into Vanguard Target Retirement or Life Strategy funds. That's one fund that covered basically the whole universe of U.S. and international stock and bond funds. You can split it up into 2 portfolios, 3, 4. This has Total Stock Market Fund, which is large cap stocks. It has some real estate in it, REITs. It's got international stocks, and it's got bonds. Anyway, you can get as complicated as you want. Do the ones with more funds in them do better? Sometimes they do. Let's go on to a third website that you can look at. This is dentistadvisors.com. This is a new group in Salt Lake City, which is a certified financial planning group. Now, those first 2 provide academically based financial information for you. They do not invest your money. They give recommendations on where to go, but they don't invest it. These guys actually invest your money. Reese Harper is the owner and founder. I've met him several times. Good person. He has a podcast, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's not just financially based. Here's one, 4 ways to grow your practice with social media. Social media, you guys need to know about that. What would happen if you lost your office manager? They cover that in an episode. A rant to make you rethink target date funds. Well, I was just looking at that on the other website, but they have some views on this, and they're academically based and they're honest. So, for some people, target date funds may not be the best. The number one thing dentists wish they'd known before transition, either into another practice or into retirement. Does your study club feel like a waste of time? In other words, they know dental practices. They spend a lot of time talking to dentists, going to the practices. It's more, this podcast, more than just financial and investing strategies. I think it's wonderful. So we've looked at three different websites here: White Coat Investor, Oblivious Investor, and Dentist Advisors. And I think all of them are valuable to you. Thanks for listening. Another website to look at is called Debt Ascent. This is run by an engineer and his dentist wife. They had $600,000 in debt coming out of school about, I'm thinking, 6 to 8 years ago. In other words, a lot of money. And he has actually kept track of paying down the debt, consolidating the different loans that he had. They had something like 10 different loans with different interest rates, different term lengths. He said it was just a mess, and he actually goes through or went through how he consolidated them. Also, about halfway through, they started to invest while they were paying off. Now, Dave Ramsey and some of the people will say, don't do that. Get that debt out of your life first and then start investing. That psychologically helps out a lot, but these guys are using mathematical terms to do it, and it's a really cool website. It's an easy read. It doesn't get geeky like some of the sheets I just gave to you, which have numbers all over the place. It's an easy read. It's really informative, and it's called Debt Ascent. Okay, for young docs, ways to escape debt, budget obviously, mortgage no more than 15% of household income. That's tough to do. That's tough to do. If your household income is $100,000 a year, $15,000 for a mortgage, $200,000 a year, $30,000 for a mortgage, that's only $2,500 a month. That's really tough to do, and very few do it. But that's something to think about. If you're at 20%, that's probably okay too. Upgrades no more than 1.5% of home value per year. Okay, there is a statistic that more expensive homes, the more expensive a home is, the more this percent goes up per year. In other words, Guile has a $3 million home. He's probably paying 4% per year for upgrades. I don't remember what the stats were on there. 4% of $3 million is 4 times 3 is $120,000 a year. That's ridiculous, but that's how it works. So try to keep it low. Okay, here's something that's really familiar. Hey, and by the way, my slides are not wonderful, guys. My nephew in Austin, who is a graphic designer and actually runs an advertising group, was going to go ahead and fix the slides. There's a lot of updates I did from the last lecture I gave. And guess who got coronavirus at the same time my wife did? Matt. So, sorry guys, you have Carlsen to deal with here with his slides. So they're not graphically pleasing, but whatever. I'm trying to get the information out. Anyway, a lot of doctors will get a loan for a practice and buy a practice in their early mid-30s oftentimes, and in their mid or early 40s, all of a sudden the $7,000 a month loan has disappeared. What do? Buy a bigger home. Who did that? Carlsen. Of course I did that. We all do that. But those that don't buy a new home, a bigger home, and have a much bigger mortgage, tend to retire earlier. You know, at that age, in your early to mid 40s, that's when you can really accelerate savings. You can actually help pay for your kids' education in college and a lot of other things. So if you don't make that mistake, you're way ahead, and I would say probably 80-90% of dentists do make that mistake. Just don't get a huge home. The bigger it is, the more you're going to pay per month for upgrades. Watch financial aid to adult children. I have a good friend in Denver now who's 78 years old. He is still working. Why? Because he has one son who does not have as good a job as this dentist thinks he should. He's earning $50,000 a year. He's got his own business now, and actually he's doing pretty well. But the doc has to pay him about another $50,000 a year just to make sure he has a lifestyle which is somewhat like his was. That's crazy. The poor kid is never going to feel like he's a real success because his parents are paying for him. Anyway, watch financial aid to adult children. That doesn't mean that after college, uh, it's bad for your college graduate to live in your basement for a couple years while they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Nothing like that at all. But by late 20s, they should be out on their own. Okay, you should have no debt other than a home loan within 10 years of retirement. Absolutely, positively. If you're going to get another car, please pay cash for it. And please pay cash for everything as soon as you can. Actually, Vicki and I have paid cash for everything since 2004, homes included, and it drives the real estate people crazy. They go, well, wait, no, you can't do that. These are good loans. Anyway, create a budget and identify possible reductions. Okay, the budget that you came up with today, which is going to be probably not too far off from what you're actually spending, look at that again, especially in this coronavirus environment that we have right now. Are there things that you can cut back on? Obviously, going out to eat, that's an easy one. But there's other things in your life right now you're going to have to simplify down because you're stuck at home or going out for walks. There's not a whole lot more to do. So your spending is going to be less right now anyway. For Vicki and I, it's quite a bit less. Well, what did you spend less on? Try to identify it. What you're doing right now going forward to cut back on some things that you really, really don't need will be important. Okay, let's look at investments. IRA contributions this year, $6,000 a piece. And if you're 50 or older, there's a catch-up provision. Hey, how did I do that? Carlsen, you're getting better. I don't think so. 401ks for 2020. This is important, guys. Maximum is $19,500 per person, and with a catch-up per person that can be in a family up to $26,000 a piece. That's $52,000, guys. Now, this is associated normally with your dental practice, and there are fees to set it up. There's ongoing fees. You're going to have to pay for your staff. So you're going to have to pay some fees more than with a simple IRA, obviously, but you can put a lot more money away. Need to talk about this guy for a second. Con Latovsky, he's a certified financial planner in Boston. Super sharp guy. Mathematically, he's crazy smart, and every time I talk to him, he leads me down rabbit holes as far as books and investing strategies. Anyway, great financial planner. He wrote an article for Dentaltown, not Dental Economics, Dentaltown, which was really sophisticated back in December of 2015. If you can go back and look at it, it has a lot of graphs, a lot of charts. It actually is brilliant. The name of the article was Retirement Planning Made Simple. Well, not exactly with Con. Nothing simple with him. But again, he's a great guy and brilliant. What he did was compared, in this case, it says, would it make sense for a couple to contribute $73,000 to $79,000 in the Safe Harbor 401k? I don't know if Safe Harbor is really popular right now or not. Against this is about 5 years ago. And at that point, a couple could put a lot of money away. The 73 to 79 is probably going to be close to $100,000. Would it make sense for them to contribute to that fancy schmancy Safe Harbor 401k with fees involved, or to just go to the regular IRAs where you can put $6,000 or $7,000 a month a piece in, and invest the remainder after tax? Huh? Well, yeah, of course. If you can put $80,000, $100,000 away in a Safe Harbor 401k, you're going to be way ahead, aren't you? Because that's tax deferred. Well, not so much. In fact, he ran through the statistics and found out if you have older employees, you're going to have to pay more per year because they're closer to retirement. If you have older employees, it doesn't necessarily make sense to get involved with one of these fancy plans versus just regular IRAs in your personal account and put the rest of your savings into a cash account after tax, not in a retirement fund. Now, if you have younger employees, he said it definitely made sense to do that. So, anyway, be careful. Get a sharp financial planner who really knows these things. Again, some of these exotic ways of saving money don't really save you money in the long run. HSAs. Hey, baby, this is win, 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 win. If you don't put money in anything else, you got to do an HSA. Contribution is tax deductible. Money grows tax free. When you take it out, it's tax free, guys. It's free, free, free. Well, you don't have to pay extra things on it. This is the best thing there is. Now, it has to be for health-related items. And the one thing is that Medicare definitely doesn't pay for everything. If you guys are over 65, you know that. So you are going to spend that money. Now, a young couple in a health savings account, if they put in the max every year, can have between $150,000 and $200,000 ready to go when they retire. Can you spend that money? Absolutely. So health savings account, don't forget about that. Contributions individual for 2020 is $3,500, a little bit more. Family contributions total is $7,100. Not a huge amount, but man, it makes sense long term. Catch up over age 50 is another $1,000. Well, let's look at investing. There's different places to go to invest your money. There's the traditional brokers, insurance companies, fee-only financial planners, robo-advisors, on your own, all sorts of different things. And this is where my slides are a little wonky here. Traditional brokers, those guys are still around. If you get involved with them, there's registered investment advisors, they're called RIAs, and there's broker-dealers. Well, which is better? The registered investment advisors. Why? Because they're fiduciaries. What are fiduciaries? Fiduciary is someone who has to provide the best products and the best advice for you that are in your best interest, period, legally. Those that are not fiduciaries have to provide suitable products and advice. Suitable means basically you can afford it. So there can be large hidden fees that they don't tell you about. So you want a fiduciary. And the registered investment advisors are fiduciaries. The typical broker-dealers are not. Well, let's see examples here. Example of broker-dealers, Wells Fargo, Edward Jones, Raymond James. You've heard of these guys. They're big boys out there. Not so good. Registered investment advisors are better. Creative Planning, these are bigger groups. Creative Planning, Mariner Wealth Advisors, and Mercer Advisors. We haven't heard of them so much. Mercer, obviously, we have. They work with dentists. Insurance companies, well, not so good. The problem is education. Insurance salesmen don't get a whole lot of education at all. They're taught how to sell products. They're not fiduciaries. And the first thing they do when they begin their education at the insurance company is they get them to buy the product so they can tell the clients, well, it's a great deal. I bought it. I have this insurance policy. I have this plan. Insurance companies often sell annuities, with high hidden fees that you may or may not be told of. In fact, the salesman may not even really know what they are, and they're rarely fiduciaries. Okay, let's talk about the ADA plan for just a minute. That is actually an insurance company plan through AXA Equitable. It's an annuity-based plan. I looked at it. I looked at the prospectus a couple of years ago really carefully. There are fees involved, and they do have index funds or something like an index fund that you'd find at Vanguard, Schwab, or Fidelity. They're not quite the same, but the mix is actually pretty good, and the fees are actually given out. You know what they are, and they're not horrible. They're not great, but they're not horrible. So if you do have the AXA Equitable annuity plan through ADA, don't necessarily ditch it. It's better than anything else you would find from an insurance company. Just wanted to let you guys know that, since this is an ADA type of audience that we have here today. Okay, well, let's talk about fee-only financial planners. There's fee-based. They don't tell you everything about your investments, and fee-only are the good guys. Well, the gold standard is Certified Financial Planner, CFP, and Reese Harper Dentist Advisors, and a lot of them out there are certified financial planners. Okay, what is different about them? It's education. They take 5 college level courses They have to work for a brokerage for 5 years, and then they take a 2-day exam to get their certification. Plus, they have to take courses throughout the years. There's continuing education for these guys that they have to do to keep their certified financial planner license. So those are the good guys. Those are really the ones you want to hang out with as far as investing. What about, or what is a certified financial planner? Just told you. What about a CPA? What about an accountant? Yes, those guys take college level courses, obviously, to get their CPA accountancy degree. Yes, they can get a certificate in financial planning, and they're just as good as the certified financial planners. So fee-only financial planners that you can go to who have certified financial planners working for them. White Coat Investor or the green ones, Targeted Wealth Solutions, Integrity Wealth Solutions, Physician Wealth Services. You don't hear about these so much because they're smaller. They're not like the big brokerages at all, but they provide better information. Dentist Advisors in Utah has certified financial planners. What about the robo-advisors? Well, I think they're fine. They use computer algorithms. They take the human element out of investing, and once you take the human element out, you're usually in better shape. Wealthfront and Betterment started, I was what, 2010 or so, 2008. Wealthfront is on the West Coast. I actually talked to those guys. They're Silicon Valley geeks, and I talked to them for a while when they were getting going. Betterment's on the East Coast, started by some women. SoFi and Bloom are very popular now. Is one better than the other? No, they all have different fee structures. You can go online and just Google robo-advisors, and they'll show you lists of them and what their fees are and what they specialize in. They're all good, and they all have certified financial planners. So that's something to consider. So what to remember here: registered investment advisor if you're going to go to a regular brokerage, certified financial planner, or certified public accountant are both good. Robo-advisors provides good advice through certified financial planners. White Coat Investor recommendations on the website. Dentist Advisors are out of Utah. They're good too. And no dentists. Investing on your own. Individual stock picks. Not a very good thing to do. Jim Cramer. I watch him on CNBC every now and then, and he's a funny dude, and he will come up with a really well-diversified portfolio. He'll say, well, you get some Intel stock, you get some Apple stock, you get an oil stock, and, how about Tesla? Yeah, that's diversified. That's absolutely crazy. Anyway, on your own, target date funds. I've talked about those a lot. What in the heck are they? Well, they're index funds, and they usually include total U.S. stock fund, which is usually the Wilshire 5000. That's just mainly large cap stocks weighted. U.S. fund, usually they have a bond fund, which is intermediate U.S. treasuries. They have your foreign funds, foreign index funds, a stock fund, which is usually Europe and Japan, and then also an intermediate term fund also with that. Here's how they start out. Bond fund is what I was trying to say there. Here's what happens. The red and the orange or yellowish, depending on what computer you have here that you see, are stock funds, and the blues are all bond funds. So where it says 45 plus down there at the bottom, that's 45 years before retirement or about age 20. So in your 20s and 30s, it's usually 90% stocks. But it changes over a period of time. Once you get out to about age 40 or so, it'll become more conservative until that 0 year is actually probably 65. We're about 50-50 stocks and bonds. It continues to become more conservative out to your early 70s or mid 70s. Well, why does that do that? Because you're going to start needing that money, and you need to be more conservative with it. When you're young, you're not going to touch that money for a long time, so you can be much more aggressive. And obviously stocks pay better than bonds long term. So target date funds, they're cheap. Which has the best? I don't know. I'm with Vanguard. Schwab has actually less expensive index funds than Vanguard now. Fidelity's fine. Any of these discount brokerages are going to provide good index funds for you for low fees. Target date, it doesn't really matter where you go. Newsletters. Hey, dentists like newsletters. And it's been a while, but 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I'd have dentists either email me or call me up and go, hey, Doug, what do you think about this newsletter? This guy's really doing great. His history is fantastic. He's fabulous. What do you think about it? And I say, I'm into index funds, and I'm really not trying to play the game of winning in investing. Mark Hulbert Financial Digest. This is actually a newsletter which tracks the newsletters. So in this, in the American Association of Individual Investors, AAII, in August 2018, there's an article that he set aside as to how well these had done. Only 3 out of thousands of newsletters beat the Wilshire 5000. That's all the U.S. stock funds since 1980. Prudent Speculator, No Load Fund X, and Value Line. Value Line I've heard of, but basically none of them do well at all, except AAII, American Association of Individual Investors. It's a nonprofit, costs like $49 a year to get the newsletter, and it really has some good investment advice. A lot of it is about target date funds and so forth, but individual picks too. If you want to pick individual stocks and get involved in puts and calls and that sort of thing, you can get information on there. So if you want to get geeky with things and invest on your own, it actually is full of good academically based information, AAII. Okay. When all else fails, go to Vanguard, Schwab, any robo-advisor, dentist advisors, or white coat investors to find somebody to invest with. Or call me. I'll just say, yeah, go to Vanguard, whatever. Get a target date fund. The less time you spend looking at funds, the better you're going to do long term. Okay, a couple of videos in a row here that I'm going to show, and it looks like I got something in my teeth. That's really cool, Doug. Anyway, I'm outside here. By the way, years ago, I started doing some YouTube financial videos, and I was in my library, and I had a coat and tie on. That lasted about 3 months or so. I eventually went into my sunroom, set up a camera in there, did some lighting against the brick wall, and whenever I meet guys at conferences, they go, hey Carlsen, where's the brick wall behind you? I don't see it. So I've been using that for years. Recently I've been going outside, and this is cold. I think it's 32 degrees out here while I'm doing that. I think this is March or something a year ago. I've been going outside. Interestingly, the neighbor down the street told me, hey Doug, you're not the only guy that's done videos outside. There's a weatherman for one of the local channels in the 90s who used to live in your house. Guess what he did? He would be outside the house doing the local weather. Oh my God, you never know. Back article is Steps You Can Take to Reduce the Risk of Behavioral Error by Charles Rotblut and Daniel Crosby, American Association of Individual Investors, which is a great newsletter to get, guys, January 2019. Research shows that 1/3 of people who think they've beaten the market have actually underperformed the market by 5%. Another 1/4 of people, or another 25%, who think they've beaten the market underperform by 15%. That means that 58% of us underperform the market by 5 to 15% per year. That's awful. They say overconfidence is the problem. Overconfidence can destroy your investment returns. Men versus women. Women are much less confident in terms of measures of investor confidence. They don't think they know what they're doing at the same level that men do. Yet, women outperform men in every conceivable way. I say not just financial, but they're talking financial here. They're less prone to going to cash. They're more likely to stay the course. They're better at weighing probability than men. Author says, I get approached by do-it-yourself investors fairly consistently who say, hey, I have a large allocation of XYZ individual equity. What do you think about it? Well, here is the evidence. He says he responds by saying the average stock has a catastrophic loss sometime. More than half of the stocks on the market suffer losses of 75% or greater. On average, I think your precious holding is going to crash and burn. And that's the long-term average. Small cap stocks in particular, and a lot of large caps also fail. He goes on to say only about a quarter of stocks have accounted for nearly 100% of the market's gains. And that changes each year, but a small percentage go way up and cover the rest of them. Very few stocks carry the S&P each year. Fully 50% of stocks have fallen to near zero at some time. Another quarter have showed no gain over many years. He goes on to say it's understanding probabilities like this that leads you to acts of humility like diversification. For me, the author, diversification is the ultimate nod to low ego and is the way that we can say, I have no idea what's going on in the market. One of my recent videos shows that 90% of my investments are in Vanguard target date funds. They're about as easy as you can get. They're a mix of large cap US and foreign stocks and bonds from both the US and foreign. In other words, I'm buying everything and just letting it sit there. How am I doing? Fine. Finally, they go into traumatic brain injury studies. This is interesting. We see that people with damage to the emotional processing centers of their brains have a hard time making basic decisions. They have a hard time picking out which suit to wear or what flavor of ice cream to have. Yet they make very good investors and are really good gamblers. They have zero confidence in the financial arena, yet do extremely well. Emotion and confidence seem to be the enemy of good investment decision making. While there are some people who would suggest that you tap into your emotions almost as a sixth sense or premonition about what's going to happen, I have not been able to find a single thread to support that in the literature. So bottom line, we see that people with brain injuries are better investors than the average male investor, especially confident male investors. Okay, I'm really cold now. I'm going inside. Say hi, Toby. He doesn't like coming outside, do you? It's cold out here. Let's go inside. Okay, and let's go to this next video. Ugh, if I can get it. Is March 30th, almost the end of March 2020. I'm going to report today on a very important article that was written on March 27th. It's titled, White Coat Investor, Bear Market. What, if anything, should you do? Again, that's March 27th, written by Jim Dolly, MD, who's the editor of White Coat Investor. I think Jim is probably the best source of information for any doctor out there. There's specialists in research like Wade Pfau and Mike Kitces who write more technical articles, but Jim Dolly really brings it together so we can understand it simply and easily. He's quite the mathematician too, so I love his work. This is a really important article about what to do when the market changes today. Okay, I'm going to be reading a fair amount off a sheet here. I don't have things memorized, so my eyes are going to be doing weird things. Before we get started, I apologize for that, but I need to get this information to you people as soon as possible. Okay, again, the article is named Bear Market, What, if anything, should you do? I'm going to do highlights of the article. I'm not going to cover all of it just because of time limitations, and I'm going to summarize somewhat. So to read the article yourself is vastly superior, but I need to get you the major information here. Okay, let's get started. Number one, stay the course. I've been telling people, this is Dolly speaking, I've been telling people for years to get a written plan in place. One of the best reasons to have a written investing plan is that when you have a question about what you should do with your investments, you simply have to go to the plan to remind yourself of what you're supposed to do. A good investing plan should have addressed what you would do in the event of a bear market. Historically, a bear market, that's a 20% drop or more in stocks, occurs about once every 3 years. Yeah, it's been 12 years since the last one, so we're not used to it. If you have a 30-year career, and live 30 years in retirement, you will be an investor for 60 years and probably have about 20 bear markets. Again, we're not used to it right now. Personal statement, investing personal statement for Jim and Katie Dolly. We will not panic and sell securities due to market corrections. We will rebalance our asset allocation as frequently as necessary using new investment money as much as possible. Any significant changes to this investing personal statement require a 3-month waiting period for reconsideration. In other words, don't change your attitudes towards investing quickly. Doug and Vicky, Vicky's my wife, additional comments. We will pay cash for everything, including houses. To use credit cards is okay as long as the bill is paid in full at the end of the month. Doug will pay all bills, make travel arrangements, and keep a budget for all purchases on Mint. Been using that for several years now. It's really simple. He will report to Vicky on all budget items once a month. Rebalance your portfolio. Rebalancing doesn't necessarily boost returns in the long run because you're usually swapping higher returning stocks for lower returning bonds, but it does ensure that you maintain the risk of your portfolio at the level you originally started at. There are lots of ways to do it, but the most common ways are to do it at the same date every year or do it when the portfolio deviates significantly from specified asset allocation. The best part about rebalancing your portfolio is it forces you to sell high and buy low. If you feel the need to do something in this bear market, this probably is the best thing to do. Vicki and I do it once a year, usually at tax time. The reason is that way we don't look at the market that often. And a lot of people will say start at a mix of 50-50 stocks and bonds. At some point, it gets above say 10 points higher where it goes to 60-40. At that point, they go ahead and turn around and rebalance by selling the winners, buying the losers. In my case, we do some rebalancing, but it's about 10% of our portfolio. That's about all we really do because most of our funds are in taxable target date funds, which automatically rebalance. Make sure you have enough cash is the next part. Okay. Jim Dolly gives a quote here. In Alaska, you carry a gun when you hike. In investing, you carry a written investing plan. Both keep you away from bears. Okay, an emergency fund, and that's what we're going to talk about here, consists of 3 to 6 months of expenses and easily accessible cash, usually a money market fund. We normally have a cash fund of $50,000 in a money market fund, and we keep it at that unless we really need it, like in a down market. Next section, reassess your risk tolerance. I often tell young investors to dial back their proposed asset allocation until they go through their first big bear market. Well, now you're probably in your first big bear market. Pay attention to how you feel about losing real money you used to have, money you invested instead of spending on a kitchen renovation trip to Paris or a Tesla. Sleeping okay? If so, then you can dial up the risk in your portfolio a bit, but do it at the end of the bear market because the market can always fall further. In other words, young dentists a lot of times are told to have maybe an 80-20 mix of stocks to bonds. Dolly is saying maybe go to 60-40 and see what it feels like. If you go through a bear market and get all the way through it and feel good about that, you may up it to 70-30 or 80-20. But if you're at 60-40 and you freak out at that, maybe you should go down to 50-50. If you're nervous about your investments and aren't sleeping okay, aren't you glad you took my advice? If you're a psychological basket case with these losses in the bear market, don't sell everything. Sell down to your sleeping point and stay there going forward. In other words, if you're at 70-30 and you don't like it at all, sell down to where you get to that 60-40 point. Congratulations, you found your risk tolerance. Unfortunately, it cost you some money, but if it's early in your career, you can certainly regain it easily over the long term, and you'll feel better about your investments going forward. This is a big deal, guys. This is the next section. Most of us are pretty good at ignoring our investment accounts for weeks or even months at a time. That's probably a good thing. It becomes harder to do when the headlines are talking about massive stock losses, which we've had recently. Your risk tolerance is probably higher if you simply avoid looking at your accounts during these times. Shred your mailed statements without taking them out of the envelopes. Get yourself locked out of your online login. Whatever it takes, just stay the course. I really like that part a lot too. My comments. Everyone the last couple of weeks, it seems, has asked me often, did you see what happened to the market today? And I'd say, no. Well, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, okay, that's fine. I'm in it for the long haul, so I'm fine. If you can get to that attitude, you're going to be much better off in the long run. Okay, then he goes into pandemic-specific advice for what we're going through right now. This may not be a normal bear market that we're going through. Nobody thinks it is, and that's probably true. Okay, number one, your mortality is higher. The first is a bit macabre to discuss, but healthcare providers, like many high-income professionals who read this blog, are more likely to get coronavirus. Dentists in particular, we're way at the top. Many of them are middle-aged or older and higher risk of dying from it than younger people. Okay, get disability insurance unless you're financially independent, number one. Get term life insurance if anybody else in your family relies on your income, say kids. Get a will in place if you don't have it already, and do any other needed estate planning. You will have more time to do it now. Get on with it and get it taken care of. Number two, your income is lower. Almost all dentists and many physicians are sheltered at home along with everybody else. Even those still working are doing it by phone and video and getting paid less, if anything at all. Luckily, your spending is almost surely down since restaurants, movie theaters, concerts, plays, school functions, and especially vacations have all gone away. However, unlike most bear markets, you may not have the money to make your regular investments. In other words, you're going to be spending less, but you may not be able to contribute to your investments as much. That's okay. That's life. You'll catch up later. Number three, you have more time. Since you are likely working less than usual, or not at all, in most dentist cases, you have a lot more free time. He says his family is enjoying the reset with our kids and being able to spend more time with them. Another great use of this pause in your life is to finally become financially literate and get a written financial plan in place. Dolly on White Coat Investor has courses in finance for doctors. They don't cost a whole lot. They're fantastic. They're well written. I would definitely think about doing that. Another comment by me. I'm not actively practicing, but even in retirement, I have a schedule I adhere to almost every day. I finally, in the last couple of weeks, have had time to read novels. I haven't done that in forever. And since the gym is closed, I've been out biking the trails in Denver more than ever. Fresh air is great. He has another section called Take Advantage of Bear Market Opportunities. I'll let you read that online. The next section is things you don't want to do in a bear market. Time the market. It's so tempting when the market is going up or down by 5 or 10% per day. Don't do it. You're an investor, not a trader. These are assets you're buying for the next 30 years, not for the next 30 minutes. CNBC? No, 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 no. Day trading? Never. I thought about doing this back in 2005 when I studied finance with great detail, but realized it was a great way to lose money quickly. Number three, don't buy individual stocks. It's no smarter in a bear market than in a bull market. You don't know if an airline, cruise ship, or oil stock is just temporarily beaten down or if it's on its way to bankruptcy. Just buy them all, an index fund, and hold them forever. As Jim says, picking individual stocks is always a loser's game. Something like 10 stocks and maybe 20 each year provide the S&P 500 all the gains you receive. Yeah, just a very small proportion. Number four, don't buy actively managed mutual funds. Active managers are no better at picking stocks in a bear market than in a bull market. They are unlikely to do it well enough to overcome the costs of doing so in the long run, and the costs are substantial. Doug, I've never purchased actively managed stocks as it makes no mathematical sense. Another thing that he brings up, and I'm not going through all of these because it'd take forever, so please read the article. Short the market. Here's another frequent temptation in a bear market to short the market. When you short a stock, ETF, or fund, you first sell it, then later on you buy it. Wait a minute, does that make sense? Here's how it goes. He says, I know it sounds a little weird, but that's how it works. The idea is that if the market falls in between the time you sell it, which you do first, and the time you later buy it, you are able to sell high and buy low. Whoopee! You actually have to borrow the securities in order to sell them at first, and lending them is a significant source of revenue to index funds and managers. Needless to say, there is a cost to borrowing them, and again, you're betting against the long-term direction of the market while trying to time it. It's a recipe for disaster. You're probably better off at the roulette table. And my comment, the math really sucks on this. I know guys that do it. It does not work. Leave the stock market for alternatives. Well, there's lots of different alternative investments out there. Private equity, real estate, oil, precious metals, hedge funds. They're promoting them like crazy now, but you'll never hear from these folks when stocks are doing well, which they usually are. Their cries are annoying, the people trying to sell these products, but these alternatives can be safely ignored as long as you follow your written financial plan. I have no investments at all in any of these things. Again, they just cost too much and they don't do better than straight index funds. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this. Again, we're living in difficult times. It's really important to stay stable and focused, and that's somewhat hard to do today. At home, with your family, and in your investments. Okay, a great book for investing strategy is this one. It's called Little Book of Common Sense Investing, written by John Bogle, who started Vanguard years ago. It's maybe a 2-hour read max, maybe an hour and a half. It's short, it's 100 pages or so. At the end of each chapter, John says, hey, if you don't believe me, listen to this. So it's very simple, common sense, obviously, and easy to read. If you don't ever read any other financial book, read this one. Just a bit on college funding. 529 plans are the best way to save for college for your kids or your grandkids. Savingforcollege.com is the place to go. Choosing your state versus another state's plan. You don't have to choose your state. Some of them have better plans. Utah is one that's traditionally had good plans. I think on the East Coast there's one state, and I don't remember which one it is. Anyway, they rate the different funds. Self-invest directly, okay? You do not want to use a broker or a fee-based financial planner. That's not a great way to go. They do have people who can help you out. It's so easy to do, and they're all index funds. You can do it on your own. Scams. Yeah, there's plenty of those. Annuities, equity index, variable, blah, blah, blah. Annuities don't normally work. There is one that I'm going to talk about later that does work and is inexpensive. Infinite banking, that seems to come around once every 8 to 10 years or so, and they say, hey, you can be your own banker. You invest in this fund. Once you reach a certain level, which doesn't take you very long, you can start borrowing out of it. Well, you know, you can be your own banker by having a bank account, an emergency fund. If you need to take money out of it, it's easy and it doesn't cost anything. Guys, this is whole life insurance. That's all it really is. Don't fall for it. Private investments. Well, in the previous video, Dolly talked a little bit about private investments. For example, I go to Rocky Mountain Dental Conference every year. You know, that's at the convention center. It's in January, and probably a lot of you people from Nebraska go there too because it's close, and they do it in January because there's skiing around afterwards that you can go to. Anyway, the vendors, one year about 5 years ago, going through the vendor area, and by the way, this last year, 2020, oh my God, it was going crazy. There were so many vendors there. They're all happy. I think people are making good money in dentistry, and then this happened. Anyway, several years ago, I was wandering around, and in the back, there was just this little booth with guys that had a couple things that showed houses or something. And I go, what the heck is this? And I sat down and asked them, and they go, oh, well, what we're doing is we're in North Dakota, and we're selling condo futures. Yeah, we're building several buildings of condos, and you know what's going on there right now, they told me. Uh, Teachers are making $125,000. Everything's going crazy. It's getting expensive is the problem. The housing especially is going way up in price. They're selling futures. They're going to be done within a year. You can make a fortune off of this. Well, again, this is 5, 6 years ago. People were making money like crazy, and then the economy fell out the next year there. So that would have been really, really dumb to do. Anyway, please stay away from these. Free seminars with meals. Well, certified financial planners will often give courses, and they're looking for clients, obviously, at local colleges and universities. It usually is something where you meet for 2 hours one night, and then a week later you meet for two more. I've actually gone to these, and they're really good. You pay maybe $40 for the materials that they give you. They give you a booklet that has a lot of information in it, and they serve cookies and coffee there. Those are okay. You're paying for something, it's not very much, and you're getting great advice. If it's at a restaurant that you're going to and there's booze and good food involved, they're going to sell you insurance. Definitely. Questions? No questions right now, guys. That was for the live performance that we had. Okay, near retirement planning and decumulation strategies. Let's go over that next. First, let's go to pre-retirement. Before you retire, there's several things that you can consider. Look at your current finances, obviously. Figure out your total stream of income projection for retirement. Social Security, pensions, annuities, 4% of your total investments, that sort of thing. What's this 4% thing that I've talked about? Let's go into that for a minute. There were a couple studies back in the 90s. William Bengen did one. Trinity did a study where they looked back to see how much you could actually take out per year and increase it by inflation each year and not run out of money between the years of 65 and 95. They went back to 1920, so it went from 1920 to 1995 or so, rolling periods to see if you retired in a given year, what your chances were taking out 4% per year or 5% or 3%. Well, they found out with a mix of U.S. stocks, which was basically S&P 500, and U.S. bonds, which is basically intermediate grade U.S. treasuries. A mix of that, anywhere from 30-70 to 70-30 stocks and bonds, either overloaded more on stocks or overloaded more on bonds. Basically, taking out 4% in any year, by age 95, you had a 95% chance of not running out of money. That's the 4% rule. It's been attacked in recent years. Wade Pfau, in particular, has had great articles on should it be 3%, should it be 2.5%, 3.5%. It still pretty much comes back to if you take out 4% per year of your total investments, say you have $1 million, that's $40,000 per year. $2 million is $80,000 per year from that fund. Index it up with inflation each year. Your chances of running out of money before you die are very, very low. Okay. Remember that most dentists will have $37,000 per year in Social Security benefits at age 66 or 67, with a spouse receiving at least half that amount. So that helps pretty much. Look at potential retirement housing, communities, etc. Long-term care, look at that. Do you have it? Does it make sense to get it? Check estate documents. Look at lifestyle changes ahead about 3 years out. Begin potential new activities, and we'll get into that later, finding your core pursuits. Fix the house now. In other words, if you're going to do major upgrades or remodeling, you've got income now. If you get into trouble and it's more expensive, you can get your way out of it. In retirement, you're on a fixed income. 2 years out, rerun your retirement numbers to make sure that you really can do it. And I put practice living on that retirement income now. Probably not, but it's something you can consider. Okay, Medicare. That comes into play about the time that dentists retire, or maybe a little bit before. Look at Medicare by researching options. when Vicki and I turned 65, our insurance was with Cal State. Anthem Blue Cross is what we had. And the first thing I did is called Anthem Blue Cross and said, how do I do this Medicare? We'd like to keep you a secondary, or I think that's what that's called, and that was what that's called. How do I do this? And they go, well, you need to go to the Medicare website and do this and this and this. And oh my God, the options drove me crazy. I was so confused, and I'm good at figuring things out normally. Got online with several people from these institutions and totally confused. I called back to Anthem Blue Cross maybe a month later and said, I really just need some help on what to do. And the person I spoke to the second time said, oh, it's easy. We're automatically your secondary. You've got all the benefits you do now. Fees are really low. It's automatic. You don't have to do anything. Now, if I would have talked to that person first, I would have saved so much time. Anyway, research it. Decumulation. Okay, let's take out some money. 4% rule, I just talked about that and how it works. Is it still valid? Pretty much. If you're closer to 70, it actually becomes a 5% rule. So at age 70 or 69, as Charles Blair tells us that a lot of us retire, 4% is going to be safe. This is an equation that Wayne Kerr came up with for his lectures, and I think it's kind of cool. Your retirement budget is at the bottom, and we worked that out earlier. If you have enough stuff to draw from each year, which makes the number greater than 1, you're in great shape. So you got Social Security benefits, 4% draw from your retirement accounts. What are other? Part-time employment, maybe, in retirement. Pensions, obviously. Rental income going forward. After-tax savings, not just your retirement savings, after-tax also, which I have a lot of, and you guys are going to have at least some in after-tax savings. Wade Pfau, if you want to get geeky, he has a book called How Much Can I Spend in Retirement, where he really looks at this 4% rule in great detail. Oh my God. It's maybe a 200-page book. There's probably 200 different tables on it. Super geeky. I've gotten through about 2/3 of it and kind of gave up and went, Wade, you're driving me crazy. Anyway, it's a cool book. Note that your taxes will be low in retirement. Here's the 2020 tables. This 12% bracket goes up to $80,000 for married filing joint. Actually, with deductions, it goes higher than that, up to about $90,000. You see that 24%, hardly any of us are going to get up to that. Hardly any of us are going to be pulling out more than $326,000 in retirement. So even the 22% bracket I wouldn't be too scared of, but man, we're in great shape up to about $90,000. Okay, how to fund retirement. Let's look at that for a little bit here. White Coat Investor Model. This is Jim Dolly again. He's got an article, something about cracking the nest egg. If you guys want to write me at drcarlsen.com, and remember Carlsen is S-E-N, drcarlsen.com, I can pick up the article and send a notation to you. He has a really elegant way of funding retirement, which funds to pull from first, and so forth. Well, first he says delay Social Security as long as possible. I think that makes a lot of sense. And let's look at Social Security for a couple of minutes. Is it going to be there? Well, we do know that the trust fund is going to be depleted by 2034, and you'll still get at least 75% of the benefits. Some say 80, some say 75, but 3/4 of it anyway will be paid, and that may bleed down in coming years after that as a trust fund. It'll be totally depleted, but there's other tax monies that Social Security has access to. So, well, let's go back in history to 1981. And the Social Security Administration informed Congress in 1981 that by March of 1983, 2 years later, this would happen. It'd be fully depleted, and there wouldn't be 75% benefit. They were going to be totally broke. Everybody freaked out. Congress freaked out. My parents' generation totally freaked out. This was either the silent generation or the greatest generation, whatever you want to call it. This is a big deal to them because that's a big amount, of their income in retirement, and it still is. So what happened? Well, Congress, in their infinite wisdom, remember funds were gone in March of 1983. In April of 1983, they actually passed a law and refunded it. What did they do? Well, first of all, the employment tax, that of course the employer pays half and the employee pays half, went from 6.7 to 7.0% on their paychecks. That had some significance for people. They also made the full retirement age, they changed it from 65 to either 66 or 67. Okay. And the biggie that they did is anybody at that time who was age 50 or older were grandfathered into the 65 Social Security age. And everybody was happy. And guess what? That's lasted for over 50 years. So what's going to happen in 2034? Basically, probably nothing until a couple months after everything has really fallen apart. And then they'll decide to change things. And what will they change? Employment tax, maybe they will, maybe they won't. They'll definitely change the full Social Security age from 66 or 67, probably up to 69, or maybe 68.5. 70 makes sense. That's a good round number. But it's going to be some goofball number again, I'm sure. And I'm certain that anybody over 50 is going to be grandfathered in to the Social Security full retirement age of 66 or 67. That means anybody over 35 years of age or older right now, your full Social Security benefit age is going to be probably the same. Is that a big deal? I don't think so. But don't count on Congress to do anything until right at the last minute. Okay, typical Social Security benefit. This is kind of interesting. It's always bottom loaded. Now, a person with $30,000 income, they're going to get half of that at Social Security time. Not us, not at all. A person earning $100,000 a year gets close to what we would get with full benefits. Now remember, if you work to age 70, it goes up 8% beyond inflation each year. So the maximum for us, who are usually age 67 now, would be up around $46,000 a year if you wait till age 70. So this is a significant amount of money, guys. And again, your spouse gets at least half. Okay, Dolly goes on to say, let's annuitize sufficient tax-deferred assets to provide for basic needs not covered by Social Security. Annuitize sufficient tax-deferred assets to provide for basic needs. What are basic needs? Shelter, food, the basic needs. In other words, if the stock market just goes down to zero, maybe it would be wise to have an annuity to cover beyond Social Security. Again, shelter, maybe having a car, electricity and water in your house, just the basics. Well, there is an annuity that's really, really good. That's cheap and appropriate. And insurance companies hate to sell it. It's called a single premium immediate annuity. What you do is you give an insurance company a wad of money, and it's just basically cash, and they will actually pay you normally about 5.5% per year of invested assets. That's a whole lot better than 4%. What's that about? Well, again, you may give them $1 million, they'll pay you $55,000 or so. The rates go up and down, and I don't know what they are right now, but around $55,000 a year until you and your spouse are gone. Well, what's the catch here? The catch is that once you're gone, there's no money left over. Your heirs get nothing. Whereas with a 4% rule, oftentimes there's a lot of money left over. It's very rare that there's nothing left over. That's the difference. It's cheap insurance. If you go to an insurance company, they're going to try to add riders so they can make money off of it. You can buy it from a bank, this single premium immediate annuity. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, a discount broker will sell it to you cheaply. Don't go to an insurance company. Again, they'll try to get you to get something else where they can make more money. but it's called a single premium immediate annuity. Okay, next, how about rental payments to fund retirement? Dividends and interest from taxable accounts. Okay, take that next. Note you are not spending principal yet. It's dividends and interest, which you pay taxes on every year. I get a pretty good tax bill on that every year. Required minimum distributions from tax defer accounts. Required minimum distributions, which are about 4%, I think, to begin with. You have to do it anyway. Withdraw from tax deferred accounts. Tax deferred. These are IRAs, 401ks, up to the top of the 12% rate. Again, that may go up to $90,000. Next, sell taxable assets with high cost basis, low capital gains, in other words. Sell taxable assets with low cost basis. And finally, Roths. Finally, Roth accounts. I'm not going to get into backdoor Roths and IRA conversions in here. It gets really, really complicated. White Coat Investor in particular has great information on how to do a backdoor Roth if you're interested. Note that if you're doing a backdoor Roth, to start in your 50s is a whole lot more advantageous than starting in your 60s. Okay, well, let's look at a worst case, let's look at a worst case scenario. What if you have no savings at age 70? Nothing, nada. What can you do? Well, first of all, Social Security, if you started at age 70, the dentist is going to get max out at about $3,800 per month. Spouse gets half of that. That's fairly significant. If I assume that the doctor has a practice, and that's worth something, a $500,000 practice, after all the things are taken out, maybe an $800,000 practice, but the dentist walks away with $500,000. 4% rule, or actually at age 70, it's more like a 5% rule. That's $2,000 a month. That's not bad. Hey, how about a reverse mortgage? I assume that this dentist who really doesn't have any savings does have equity in his home, and that's almost always the case at age 70. So a $500,000 reverse mortgage will provide $1,500 a month. Guys, that's $91.85 per month, or $110,000 per year for having no savings at age 70 and retiring. How bad is that? Well, for example, my parents were in Fresno, California, and the demographics and everything in Fresno are fairly similar to Omaha. They're about the same size cities. It's in California, but it's not in a real expensive part of California at all. So the home that they lived in for years had a pool in the backyard, and it was in a nice neighborhood. They went to the coast when they were retired, probably once every couple months for a weekend. Fresno's about 3 hours from the coast. They'd take European vacations maybe once every 2 years or so. They were living actually pretty decent lifestyle. Didn't go out to fancy restaurants at all, but they did go out. They had cars that were new every 5 years that they bought, and they were usually Camrys or Buick Regals or something like that. Anyway, they lived on $65,000 a month, $65,000 a year in today's dollars. That's about half of $110,000. What about dentists? Can they live on $110,000 per year? Absolutely. I know of them, and they're happy in retirement. I got a good friend in San Diego who lives in La Jolla, and he's living on $90,000 a month, and he's doing fine. So guys, you will be okay. Alrighty, one thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and you never hear much about this, is personal liability umbrella policy. This is not associated with your office at all. It's associated with your homeowners and car insurance. Personal liability umbrella. So you get in an accident, somebody in a car, and they find out that you're a dentist and they sue you up the yin-yang. Yeah, that can cost some bucks if you're not careful. For example, though, in my neighborhood, it's an older neighborhood in Denver. Our house was built in 1939. We've got a brick home, fairly small lots. We're close to a north-facing sidewalk. So we got this 2-story brick building, brick home, next to a sidewalk north facing. We get snow in the winter. We get more than you guys in Omaha get in the winter. And it gets icy. I put signs out there, but say somebody walks down the sidewalk, slips, falls, hits their heads, and dies. Who gets sued? Me. Well, your uh, office policy isn't going to help you at all on this. So, personal liability umbrella policy will. You have it through your homeowners and car insurance. So, what did I do recently? I looked at it and it's $2 million. And I thought, is that really enough? I'm not sure how much I should have. So I called my USAA agent and asked him and said, "Where are we now? Is it 2 million?" And he said, "Yeah, it's 2 million. How much am I paying per year? 400." And I go, "Oh, okay, that's not bad at all. How much should I get though? Do you have any idea? I'm a retired dentist. We're doing pretty well financially." And he said, "Okay, if somebody sued you and you lost everything, how much would that be?" And I said, "About 5 million or so." Get 5 million of personal liability umbrella policy. And I said, "Well, how much more is that?" And he goes, "Well, you're paying 400, it'd be 700. Duh, that's nothing. That's so easy. So guys, get personal liability umbrella insurance if you don't have it already. Okay, new for 2020. This is just past December 15th last year. Required minimum distribution start at age 72 now instead of 70 and a half. Some of you are going to be happy about that, but what's going to make you unhappy is the amount that you have to pay. The percentage at age 72 is higher than it used to be because you're going to be alive less years. Anyway, that's a change. Contributions to traditional IRAs can now be made after age 70 and a half. It used to cut off there. So you can be retired and still contributing to an IRA fund at any age. Stretch law for children inheriting IRAs. It used to be that after you died and children inherited IRAs, they could stretch out the tax payments for those IRAs over a full lifetime. Now it's 10 years. Guys are not real happy about that, but that's the way it is. Square away your housing in retirement. Well, a lot of people out there are thinking about where they're going to live in retirement. Is it going to be right where they are? Well, a lot of dentists stay home. They're there, they're happy, and everything's fine, and they make no changes. Others think in terms of, well, maybe we can get a second home in a different spot, maybe near some of our relatives, our children who are away from us. That might make sense. It'd be easier for them rather than visiting them. Plus, we'd like to spend more time there. Second homes, your primary residence. A lot of doctors downsize. Say a couple lives in a 4,200 square foot home and their thoughts are, well, you know what? We don't need all this space. The kids used to live here. They've left years ago. Yeah, the house is full of stuff, but it's all their junk that they don't want anymore, but we're keeping there. We need to downsize. Where are we going to go? Well, typically, downsizing means going to a smaller house, usually in a nicer place, which is often on a golf course, and you're paying more. That's okay if you can afford it, and most people can. So there's all sorts of different changes that can occur as far as going into retirement. If you want to move to a different place, it makes sense to take vacations there beforehand, even before you retire. Say if you're in Omaha and you want to have a place on the California coast, well, which ones are affordable first of all? And there are some affordable places which are near the coast. Try them out beforehand. Second homes. A lot of dentists have second homes while they're working. Some of them get them in retirement. As far as second homes, if you don't have one and you're thinking of one where you'll be there part of the year, maybe several months or so, think in terms of possibly doing a long-term Airbnb instead. Yes, you can rent up to 6 months or so on Airbnb, go to the same place every year, and you don't have to worry about maintaining it. You don't have to worry about responsibility for the property. It makes life quite a bit easier. The actual fees that you're paying are probably not going to be a whole lot different from all the maintenance, upgrades, and everything else you have to pay for in a second home. And again, you don't have to worry about it when you're not there because you don't own it. So think in terms of possibly Airbnb. Hey, what about long-term care? Let's look at that. 7 in 10 retirees will need long-term care. Annual nursing home costs are $102,000. 7 in 10 will need it. And I think the average time in say a skilled nursing center for that is about 2 years. Rate for skilled nursing facility now averages over $100,000 per year. Should you self-fund? Yeah, you could, but that's going to cost you about $500,000 per person to really have enough money to go through 2 or 5 years. And if you get into a memory care or Alzheimer's situation, it can be a lot longer than 2 years. Here's a quote from Federal Long-Term Insurance that I came up with recently. Getting insurance at age 60, $250 a day. Actually, most places now it's more like $225, but $250 a day is a good amount to get for up to 5 years of care. Usually care is for 2 years. Alzheimer's, again, can go even longer than that. This insurance for 2 people costs $12,000 a year or $1,000 per month. Does it make sense to think about it? Absolutely. Insurance worth it? It depends. Here's another alternative, which I think most of you know about. These are continuing care retirement communities. There's all sorts of different types, but the good ones really are the level A's with multi-level coverage. These are the nice ones where you can enter as an independent care person and have an apartment. They have nice restaurants, nice workout areas, beautiful gardens. The level A's are really, really the best thing out there. In particular, I looked at the V's. V's seem to be the top level ones everywhere. They have one in Silicon Valley near Stanford. There's one down in San Diego. I'm sure there's one near Chicago. Probably not in Omaha. It's not big enough. But these type of places have an entry fee that you have to pay to get into. You need to enter at independent living status. Otherwise, you won't be eligible for skilled nursing or memory care at these places. They have all levels there. You pay an entry fee, and it depends on what the apartment is that you're going to get, and also how much you get back when you die. For getting zero back, your monthly fees are less, and probably the deposit for your apartment is going to be less. This is 50% returned upon death, looking up by Denver. Anyway, there's different levels that you can receive upon death. So anyway, you got to put down a fairly sizable deposit to begin with, and that's based on the costs of the homes in the community. Omaha area would certainly be less than Denver for your deposit. Monthly fees are fairly much the same, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. When you do upgrade to another level of care, say you go in at independent and years later you need to go to skilled nursing, they do kick up the fees, but it's not that much. It may be $500 a month to go up to $6,000 a month, and then memory care, it goes up a bit more. So it's not that much more to go to the different levels, but you have to enter at independent care. If you enter at skilled nursing, then it's a whole different ballgame. Anyway, these places are gorgeous. Vicky's parents lived in one of these in Southern California for about 6 or 7 years, and they said everything was great. The people were great there. The service was fabulous at the restaurants. Grounds were kept up beautifully. It was really a wonderful place. The only negative is, number one, they felt like they were in a prison because neither one of them drove anymore, and they were surrounded by old people all the time. So they're not the best for everybody, but boy, they provide everything for you, and it's easy living. Something to consider. Hey, let's talk about core pursuits. What are you going to do in retirement? How many things should you be doing? Well, one book in particular, there's a bunch of retirement books out there. There's a lot of information. There's YouTube videos. There's all sorts of things. This book I really like a lot. It's called Life After Dentistry. It's written by Alan Rodberg. There's another one that says Life After Medicine. There's another one that's generic, Life After Something for everybody. It's the same book for all of them. It has an actual story. There's a written dialogue in there, which is kind of goofy but fun. The key thing is there's worksheets in the back where you can actually discuss what you want to do in retirement, what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what your worries are. There's worksheets, and Vicki and I went through that one day, probably 3 years ago or so, and it was really enlightening as to what our real thoughts about retirement and requirements and requests would be. Also, core pursuits. Wes Moss, in his book about retirement, says that happy retirees have 3 or more core pursuits in retirement. Unhappy ones have 1 or 2. I think with dentists, the way our minds work, we're going to have 3, 4, or more. So we're going to be okay in retirement. Okay, one thing I'd like to talk about here, I put this slide in extra kind of at the last minute. This is a year that we're really going to remember for a long time. As I said earlier, nothing like this has happened in my lifetime at all, and even in my parents' lifetime. World War II was a major event. It may be somewhat similar to that. We're going to war against an invisible enemy, though. So you've got a break right now, guys. No, you're not working. It's a time to maybe think in terms of doing something else for a change. With me, I'm going to start reading. I've been busy right up until now giving this course, and I've got a lot of free time ahead of me now. Reading novels, I haven't done that for a long time. You guys might want to take up a new hobby. In particular, I've thought in terms of taking up bass guitar. Buying a guitar and an amp, it doesn't cost that much, guys. Maybe $500, $1,000 max at the most to purchase one of these. And guess what? There's YouTube videos to show you how to play the guitar. Singing lessons are on YouTube. A lot of different things. You may want to take up writing. Fix up the house. I got a ton of things I can do around the house. Spend more time outside by gardening. There's a lot of different things you can do now while you're waiting to get back to practice. What I'd like to do is play a video here. This is kind of a goofy one that I came up with several years ago, and it's on my YouTube channel about core pursuits and what the importance of them are. So let's play that. Well, welcome to part 3 of the Multimillionaire Dentist series. This is on core pursuits, and it's a fun... By the way, there is a millionaire series on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Dr. Doug Carlsen with an S-E-N, just D-R-D-O-U-G-C-A-R-L-S-E-N. Series here in that you get to see me and my stupid core pursuits. No, actually, a lot of them are interesting. So what I'd like to do is bring up something that's important, though, before we start, that dentist advisors really don't bring up. The question is, how long can you physically expect to enjoy retirement? Couple different statistics here. First of all, American Psychological Association tells us that 40% of men and 53% of women at age 85 need assistance bathing and eating. Again, 40% of men and 53%, actually more women, need assistance bathing and eating at age 85. Well, let's look at another statistic by Social Security Administration. At age 60, a man can expect to live to be 82 on average. At age 60, a woman could expect to live to age 85. In other words, you can't expect to live at age 85 the life that you had at age 60 or 70. If you retire at age 60 or 65, this means that you have 20 to 25 good years left. If you retire at age 70, you may only have 15 years left to really enjoy retirement. In other words, don't wait too long to retire. Now, I know that Charles Blair has told all of us dentists that the average dentist retires at age 69 now. Well, that's close to age 70. If you have a chance to retire earlier, it may make sense to go ahead and retire, as you will have more years ahead to enjoy retirement. Now, on to core pursuits. A lot of dentists have core pursuits, avocations, hobbies, pre-retirement, But remember, they're going to become even more important in retirement. Why? Because you have a lot more time. You have a big hole there where you were previously working in your dental career. Remember, Wes Moss says that happy retirees have 3 or more core pursuits. Unhappy retirees only have 1 or 2. Notably, most multimillionaire dentists seem to have 4 or 5 or even more core pursuits. How many vacations are you going to take per year? Vicki and I, we'd like to take 1 cruise per year. We've done that only twice in our lifetime so far.
Now this gets a little bit goofy, but guys, really this is fun. And this is a financial lecture, so we might as well have some fun here. These are different things that I like to do just to kind of stimulate your mind here.
But we'd like to take a 1 or 2 week cruise once a year. Those can get expensive, so you got to watch it. You might be able to hear a roar in the distance. We've got a little waterfall coming up here. We'd like to visit a national park, at least 1 each year. That's not expensive. This is bushwhacking. Whack, 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 whack. 1 to 2 road trips, probably eating up 3 or 4 weeks of our time to visit relatives throughout the country and also friends. Ah!
That's all for me.
No, you need more.
No, that's it.
Actually, I started out with painting after retiring at age 53. Didn't quite know where I was going to go with anything, and my first wife, who died of cancer, told me, Doug, whenever you get into trouble and don't know what you're going to do, take a drawing class. So I did. That morphed into watercolor painting for a couple years. That morphed into writing, and I've written financial things, which I think I know a little bit of and learned more as I went along. Wrote a lot of articles for Dental Economics, a Dental Town over the years. Been interested in music also. Skiing and mountain biking. Okay, go get him, Josh. He is kicking butt. He is American at every turn. What's up, guys?
Okay, guys. See you guys.
Dave, going back.
I'm taking off now.
Okay, see you,
Catch
Dave.
later. Dave's got to sign some forms first.
See you in hell.
That's Toby in
Spent
the
a lot of time at
background.
the gym working out with weights and a lot of core work and a lot of cardio in particular. And that has to do with high cholesterol and some higher blood pressure that I have. I hate medications. They make me stupid. Kids love kids. We're in a neighborhood, an older neighborhood of Denver here, and all of a sudden we got kids all over the place the last couple of years. That's really, really fun. Oh, it's a princess. You look so pretty. Oh, that's nice. Oh, wow, that is so nice. I'm into weather. Well, I took a meteorology course Fall semester last year, the local university killed me. One of the toughest courses I've ever taken. Anyway, I want to be a storm chaser. I think that would be a lot of fun. My wife says I'm absolutely crazy. She said, why would you want to spend 2 weeks out with some smelly guys in a crowded van, eating crappy food, staying in a cheap motel, and chasing after tornadoes, which could kill you? What are you thinking? I think it'd be cool. It's a lot of volunteering by dentists, pre-retirement and into retirement, sometimes in third world countries, a lot of times locally. 100% of dentists say it's way, way worthwhile. I have not gotten into that. I may in the future. Last thing I'd like to comment on is, I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's meetup groups. There's dance meetups, there's singles meetups, all sorts of different things. Walking meetups, painting meetups. Every place has them, but there's always outlets for people your age doing types of things that you may be interested in. They're called meetup groups.
So, retirement should be about living, enjoying things in life. These are our two grandsons. Mason's on the floor there. He's 8 now. Xavier, I just saw a couple minutes ago via a drive-by. He lives in Denver with his parents, and we haven't really seen them much at all because of the quarantine thing, or the social distancing thing. So they came by and said hi on their way to go somewhere a few minutes ago. It's Mason and I up at a ski resort. There's Mason. He lives in Virginia Beach with Vicky, my wife. This is Mason's mom, Kristen. Yeah, she normally looks like that. Just kidding. There's my alter ego at a 70s party a while back. My mom, who died a couple years ago at age 98 with her great-granddaughters who live in Maine. A couple of friends. My brother, who looks somewhat like me, only a whole lot better, and his wife. There's Mason again. What the heck is this? Oh, hang on. This is the Jimmy Buffett and Eagles concert at Coors Stadium a couple years ago. The first one after Glenn Frey died. First ever. Some people say that there's a world to play, and I know it's not all damn wrong. Family reunion. We do this with Vicky's extended family at Lake Tahoe every 2 years. We're not going to make it this year. It's usually in August. But down here we got Mason. Xavier's over here. This is Ellie, which is a grandniece, I guess is what she would be. This is Vicky's brother, other people. And I think it's time to check in with Dr. Guile again.
They spend $140,000 more than Guile's income of $1 million. What's their overall net worth? Minus $1 million. Yes, minus $1 million. Guile's frustration. I earn great money. I live in a great spot. I've got great neighbors. Life should be happy, but something isn't quite correct here. My wife and I were much better off financially right out of college. I took a quick look at Guile's Rolex watch and kind of chuckled and said, Tom Stanley was right. Stanley wrote the Millionaire Next Door series. Stanley says there is a high correlation between the price of one's watch and their consumption lifestyle. Stanley goes on to tell us that many professionals are income affluent and balance sheet destitute. So how did Guile, with a large income, get in the hole over $100,000 a year without having a second home, a boat, or a plane, or any of those? Stanley goes on to say that nothing has a bigger influence on your wealth and consumption than the neighborhood that you live in. If you live in a pricey home in an exclusive neighborhood like Guile does, your ability to save will be compromised. There are social pressures to redecorate frequently, join a country club, and have your kids go to the proper schools. Also, I find there's pressures to buy the right autos, wear the right clothes, and take cruises on the right lines. For example, my wife and I took a Viking Baltic cruise last summer. It was great. It was $25,000 for 2 weeks. It was exquisite. The service was great. There were only 1,000 people on the ship. There was plenty of room. We had great guides, but yet it was expensive. So how can Guile tame this debt monster? First of all, he needs to learn that leveraged debt can cause financial ruin, and he's going in that direction. He really doesn't own anything. His house is mortgaged and he's paid something off, but he's used any of that equity for a large HELOC he took out several years ago. His cars are leased, he doesn't own them. He really doesn't have anything. In fact, he has as much interest on his credit card debt as the value of the clothes he has. Second, Guile needs to start chipping away at this massive debt that he has. His huge emotional investment and the toys that he has and the lifestyle of his family is going to have to slow down tremendously. Better to take care of this problem at age 52 than at age 75 or 80. Battle plan for Guile. First, cut the clothing allowance for Guile and his family in half. Yeah, his wife is going to have to take a big hit. No more new cars for 6 years. In other words, once the leases are over, keep the cars. And as far as the girls are concerned, as soon as the leases run out on those cars, they're going to need to buy new cars on their own for either loans or leases. They're old enough to be able to take care of that. As far as vacations, he usually travels first class to pretty much everything, and that's going to have to stop. He can cut his budget for travel, personal travel, each year by half and save about $50,000. University, well, both girls are going to have to take responsibility and take out loans. Now, his one daughter will be out of school very soon, so anything as far as medical school or graduate school, she's going to have to take out loans. Also, the other daughter, who is in a public university, is going to have to take loans out for herself. They're going to have to face real life sacrifices. Country club, hey, I've emasculated Guile enough. You know, they're not spending that much on the country club. They really value the friendships. They do have good friends who do a lot of good deeds in the community. So I think that's absolutely fine. Well, what about the home? Well, first of all, it's going to be difficult for Guile to sell the home and make any money right now in today's environment. Also, with proper spending in the other areas, he's going to make a huge difference without having to go through selling his home. We've saved Guile over $200,000 a year. That takes care of that $100,000 he's underwater each year and should provide to start saving for the future and cutting down his massive net worth debt of $1 million. A year later, I hadn't heard from Guile, so I called him. He told me, I can't face my wife and kids and tell them I'm a financial failure. The kids have the financial tools, I feel, to become successes in life, and I don't want to ruin that for them. They deserve the best. 2 years later, Guile called me. 3 days before, at his office one day, he had had palpitations. His left arm was starting to feel numb. He was feeling chest pains, and all hell was breaking loose in the office. Well, they called the paramedics. They came in, took him to a local hospital, and after extensive tests, they found out that really nothing was wrong. He had not had a cardiac event. He had not had anything near a stroke. Basically, he was okay, and the official diagnosis was exhaustion. He felt he'd been lucky, but had he changed anything in his life? No. With the help of a clinical psychologist, he did set up a meeting with his wife and his 2 kids soon after. The miracle was the wife and both daughters sensed that there was something probably wrong as far as finance for several years. And they totally embraced the changes that he brought up. It was like a miracle. Now, this doesn't always happen with professional families. In fact, oftentimes there's huge resentment that can go on for years. He was lucky. I think part of it has to do with the fact that they knew that he was providing so much to the local community through various charitable functions and working in third world countries. They really had everybody's best interest at heart. Afterwards, Giles set up a meeting with his CPA who handled his dental finances over the years. He did not have a financial advisor. He didn't need one. He didn't have any money to invest. But we hooked him up with a certified financial planner in the area who's working with him to actually get on the right path. 3 years later, Giles has crushed it. He has real savings of over $500,000 and is putting away $350 plus per year. Lessons learned? Giles was living the life that many professionals would love to have. He had everything. What he didn't have, though, was real savings, and he had a lifestyle that was barreling out of control. He did misjudge what a successful parent is really about, and that is providing the tools to your kids so that they can go out on their own and have happy lifestyles after they're gone and after you're gone. All is well now. The cars are a little bit older, but they're still as shiny as they were before. One daughter is out of school and is working for a local tech startup. The other daughter, is just finishing up med school and will be working forever, but she's very happy with her specialty that she's taking on. Giles' wife is working in the startup company of the daughter, and guess what? Giles still has his Rolex. Thanks for listening. 6 years ago, I had the pleasure of attending a Denver dental. 6 years.
Alrighty, to end things up here, then we'll have a bonus video at the end I think I can bring up. Blogs. I talked about White Coat Investor. Dentist Advisors has a great blog. Even though they're a certified financial planning group, they have a lot of practice management information on the website for dentists. Debt Ascent is about a young couple, how they're paying down their debt, which is pretty much gone now, and investing for the future. Can I Retire Yet is a book and a blog written by Darrow Kirkpatrick. It's a really cool book that's written and gets into all sorts of things about retirement. So that's another one that I didn't really bring up other than Darrow Kirkpatrick before. Videos. I got a bunch of videos on YouTube. Just go to Dr. Doug Carlsen. They cover the gamut of different financial things. Books, Little Book of Common Sense Investing, I talked about by John Bogle. Can I Retire Yet is by Darrow Kirkpatrick. You can find that on Amazon. Life After Dentistry, I talked about at the end. Now to get in touch with me, drcarlson@gmail.com. And I think we've got one video left here. This actually goes through the difference between two doctors. One has a lot of money and one does not have a lot of money, and what constitutes real happiness.
Thank you much. Well, in your speakers folder there, it says I'm going to talk about 3 different things. I've decided to talk only about the last one, which is hidden gems for financial freedom. The reason is it's really important. In my workshops, I talk about a lot of detail and have a lot of interaction. Detail and interaction. We go through worksheets where people actually figure out their retirement number, retirement budgets. We talk about investment strategies. We actually do case studies of dentists that are doing poorly or doing well, where we figure out where we think they are, and then we discuss what actually happens. And I track these guys, so I can report in what actually happened. A lot of detail, but The big but here that I want to talk about today is the fact that I've talked to a lot of retired dentists over the last several years, and let's take an example of two. One is Dr. A, who's living on $75,000 a year. Now that's better than the average American, but actually dentists would prefer to have more like $150,000 a year. That matches their lifestyle better. But he only has $75,000. Over here we got Dr. B, who can spend $300,000 in retirement. He saved $8 million. He's doing great, right? Well, I tell you, after interviewing these people extensively, it's a crapshoot as to who is actually more comfortable and has a more fulfilling life in retirement. Wow. Why? I need to go over a couple things here. First of all, health. I'd like to tell a little story about my first wife. She had breast cancer from 1996 to 2001. She did not make it, and I still miss her a lot. But the point is she went out to LA for extensive radiation treatments at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Cedars-Sinai is right next to Beverly Hills. So she was in a group at the clinic of very wealthy people. And of course, when she went for these treatments, she talked to them. Well, typically, we'll call the woman Rose, whose husband Herb is going through radiation treatment. She talked to him. And Rose would say something to the effect of, you know, my doctors told me 25 years ago I should quit smoking. And you know what? If I had, I'd have more energy to take care of Herb. Yeah, we have a person who's 24/7 at the house. But you know what? I don't have the energy and I'd like to take care of him. Meanwhile, she talks about Herb. He was told years ago that he needed to exercise because of a heart condition. She says, you know, he doesn't have any energy. The radiation is absolutely killing him. He should be in better shape. I'm afraid that he's not going to last much longer, and I would give anything, all the money I have, my beautiful house in Beverly Hills, just to be around him 2 more years. True story. She heard many, many of these stories. So health is very, very important. This is not a well, it's actually a prompt, not a prompt. I'd like to show you for a minute. Something else about health. We got Lisa here, who's a health expert. Have any of you read this book? It's called Younger Next Year. I know David, a couple of you have. I know David Black, who's next door, has read it. This is written by a 70-year-old author and a 46-year-old physician. What they propose through research in this book is that people are able to maintain their athletic ability and fitness that they had in their 40s up until their mid to late 80s. Wow. People are able to maintain their fitness athletically into their mid to late 80s. Well, the main author here, who's Chris Crowley, is 70. He says, I've had the best year ever skiing and biking. He lives in Colorado like I do. I've always wanted to be able to ski until I was 80, and not just ski, but ski bumps and ski trees, which I really like to do. I'm 64 and I can still do it. There's hope. So what in the heck? How can you do this? Well, here's the catch. Chris says you have to work out 6 days a week, an hour a day. Holy crap, my God, who's going to do that? I can work out 3 days a week, but 6 days is the key. So if you do this 6 days, what do? You run for an hour? You do hot yoga? Do you do this CrossFit, which I've never done? No, he says, even if you just walk a mile in that hour, you're going to be much, much better off than you were before. So health is a key thing. We're talking about a triad here. Financial responsibility, health, and the third thing, which you guys probably don't think of much, and it's connections. Connections. In the first 2 years of retirement, for doctors in particular, there's a lot of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, suicide. Why? Because the connection is broken at work. No, you don't have office staff to complain about anymore. You don't have patients to complain about anymore. You don't have colleagues to talk to as much anymore. And the big thing is you're not doctor anymore. You're Mr. or Ms. Wow. Connections are important. I want to tell you people, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys are incredible. You are the most connected group I've ever talked to. Even if I weren't speaking, I'd come back year after year. Linda, I mean, you guys are incredibly connected. Linda, how many Facebook friends do you have? I got 500, and that's more than my daughters and sons. I mean, it's incredible. You guys are connected. That's vitally important in retirement. It doesn't have to be your colleagues. It can be new connections. And in Colorado, I'm finally starting to make some connections with sports people. So this is a triad. This is a three-legged stool: financial responsibility, health, and connectivity. I claim that if you have 2 out of the 3, you're going to be okay. That $75,000 a year doctor probably has, if he's happy, has the health and the connections. Thank you much for listening.
And thank you much for listening. Again, to get in touch with me, it's drcarlson@gmail.com. Thank you so much for having me virtually at the Nebraska meeting this year. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys in the future. Take care and have a great day.